Hi, today we're going to talk about the zero and negative exponent rules. So let's dive right in. Before we can talk about these properties, we're going to kind of do a little bit of a discovery. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find 2 cubed. Now remember that 2 cubed means 2 times 2 times 2. So that's going to give us 8. 2 squared means 2 times 2, which is 4. 2 to the first is just a 2. So the exponent is telling us how many times to write down that base, okay? So when I get to 2 to the 0 power, what does that mean? Well, remember that math is all about patterns. So let's look at the patterns that we see here in our answers. So first, I notice that my exponents are decreasing by 1 each time. So that's the pattern. What is happening as I go from the 8 to the 4? We're dividing by 2. So to go from 8 to 4, you divided by 2. Is that pattern also true when you go from 4 to 2? Yes, you're divided by 2. So if that pattern holds, then to get the next answer, I need to divide by 2. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. So 2 to the 0 power must be 1. Let's try the next column. So let's try 3 cubed. Remember that means 3 times 3 times 3. So that's going to give me 27. And 3 squared means 3 times 3, which is 9. 3 to the first power would just be 3. What's the pattern here in our answers? So if I go from 27 to 9, I'm dividing by 3. And if I go from 9 to 3, I'm dividing by 3. So to get my next answer, I just need to divide by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. So 3 to the 0 power is also 1. Now notice you have 2 more examples. So you might be thinking, okay, 4 to the 0 power should be 1 and 5 to the 0 power should be 1. Let's test that theory out. So let's do the 4s. So 4 cubed means 4 times 4 times 4. So that would be 64. 4 squared is just 4 times 4, which is 16, and 4 to the first power we know is 4. So again, what do you think is happening each time as we move down the column? We're dividing by 4. So if I do 4 divided by 4, I get 1. So it looks like any number to the 0 power is going to be 1. And we're going to try it one more time with the 5s. So 5 cubed, remember, means 5 times 5 times 5, which is 125. 5 squared is just 5 times 5, which is 25. And 5 to the first is 5. And yep, if I divide 125 by 5, I get 25. And 25 divided by 5 is 5. So 5 divided by 5 gives me 1. Now, I'm going to pause for just a second here. If you have not copied this information down, then you really need to pause the video now and get that information copied. All right, so it says, now determine a general rule for what happens when we have any number written to the 0 power. So it looks like any number to the 0 power is 1. Okay, and then we have an algebraic rule that we need to write, okay? So, and the algebraic rule that we're going to write here is we're going to say x to the 0 power equals 1, and I want you to highlight that. Okay, so x, remember, is a variable that just stands in place of a number. So we're saying any number, and it doesn't matter what number you have, if you carry it to the 0 power, you're going to get a 1. If you'll come down here, we're going to do just a couple of examples real quick. So for example, if I was going to do 1/2 to the 0 power, it's 1. What if I did negative 5/8 to the 0 power? Also 1. What if I do negative 9 to the 0 power? That's going to be 1. Now let me point this one out. Notice how I put the fractions in parentheses and I put that negative 9 in parentheses to the 0 power. That means something different. This and this do not mean the same thing. And this is where some students get confused. Okay, notice that in the second one, the negative 9 is not in parentheses. The second one can be thought of as negative 1 times 9 to the 0 power. So if 9 to the 0 power is 1, this is really saying negative 1 times 1, which gives me negative 1. So that's a special case that I want you to pay attention to. If you've got a negative number to the 0 power, if the number itself, the base is in parentheses, then yeah, the answer is 1. But if the base is not in parentheses, which is what is happening right here, then it's not 1, okay, because it means something different. So pay particularly close attention to that. All right, let's do the next page. So the next page talks about the negative exponent rule. So now we know that any number to the 0 power is equal to 1. So now we're going to find out what it means when you have a negative exponent. So let's come over here on the side with the 3s. Let me zoom out just like that. And we're going to just start off just like we did before. So we know that 3 cubed is 27. We did this just a little bit ago. We know 3 squared is 9. We know that 3 to the first is 3. And we know that 3 to the 0 power is 1. We also know that to go from each one, we were dividing by 3, right? As the exponents decrease, so I want you to pay attention. See, the exponents here are going down by 1 each time. And each time, we're dividing by 3. So to get the next value, all I got to do is divide it by 3. So I've got to do 1 divided by 3. Well, one way to write that is like this. The fraction 1 over 3 means the same thing as 1 divided by 3. They mean the same thing. Remember, fractions are just a way to express division. So really, 1 divided by 3 is 1/3. The fraction 1/3. What happens next? I'm going to divide by 3 again. Actually, and I meant to change my color. Let me come back here and change my color to that green. There we go. So now I've got to do 1/3 divided by 3. And so you might not remember, you might have forgotten, when you are dividing, okay, with fractions, your teacher might have told you a trick. They might have told you keep, change, and then flip. 1/3 divided by 3 is the same as 1/3 times 1/3, which is 1/9. So this is going to be 1/9. And then to figure out 3 to the negative 3rd power, we're going to divide by 3 again. Okay, give me just a second. There we go. Okay, so now when I do 1/9 divided by 3, a lot of times students kind of start noticing a pattern here. And maybe you're noticing it as well. So that should be 1 over, oops, let me change my color again. 1 over 27. So look what's happening here. First, the negative exponents did not mean that we had a negative answer. Okay, that's not what it meant. But what did happen? What do you notice between 3 cubed and 3 to the negative 3rd power? The answers are reciprocals of one another. Remember, a reciprocal is when you flip your numerator and denominator. So 27 and 1/27, they're reciprocals. Notice here when we do 3 squared and 3 to the negative 2 power, 9 and 1/9, reciprocals again. And the same holds true when we do 3 to the first and 3 to the negative first power. 3 and 1/3 are reciprocals of one another. So hopefully you're noticing that pattern here. Let's try it with the 4s. So 4 cubed, we already know is 64. And we already know that 4 squared was 16. 4 to the first is 4. And we discovered, remember on the previous page, 4 to the 0 power is 1. Okay, and we talked about the patterns. Here, you're dividing by 4 each time. That's your base, so we were dividing by 4. So if I'm going to do 1 divided by 4, that's going to be 1/4. And then I'm going to do 1/4 divided by 4, which is the same as 1/4 times 1/4, which gives me 1/16. And then I'm going to do 1/16 divided by 4, which is what? You guessed it, 1/64. Again, we have that pattern. 4 cubed and 4 to the negative third power, their answers are reciprocals of one another. Same thing for 4 squared and 4 to the negative 2 power. 16 and 1/16 are reciprocals. What about 4 to the first and 4 to the negative 1/4? Reciprocals again. So hopefully you're paying attention, and maybe you can notice some patterns when we do the 5s. So the first part we already know, right? That's 125. There we go. 125, 25. Oops. 5 and 1. So what do we predict 5 to the negative 1 power would be? 1/5. What about 5 to the negative 2 power? 1/25. And how about 5 to the negative third? 1/125. So all we got to do is look at the previous. So if you were doing 5 to the negative 4th power, if I had to do 5 to the negative 4th, I could find what 5 to the 4th power is and then take its reciprocal. Now let's look at the next section. The next one. Now we've got fractions. So 2/3 cubed. Now remember that means 2/3 times 2/3 times 2/3. So that's going to be 8/27. 2/3 squared means, remember, 2/3 times 2/3, which would be 4/9. 2/3 to the first is just 2/3, and any number to the 0 power we know is 1. So what do we know about 2/3 to the negative 1 power? Well, if we're following the patterns that we saw before, this answer and this answer should be reciprocals of one another, right? So all I need to do is take the reciprocal of 2/3, which is going to be 3/2. Also, and then when I do 2/3 to the negative 2 power, I only need to take the reciprocal of this. So the reciprocal of 4/9 would be 9/4. And then if I want to do 2/3 to the negative 3rd power, then I need to take the reciprocal of 8/27. So that's going to be 27/8. Okay. Let's do the last one. I'm going to move my picture over here to this side. Okay, so I've got 1/3 cubed, which means 1/3 times 1/3 times 1/3. Remember, when you're multiplying fractions, you multiply straight across. So that's going to be 1/27. 1/3 squared means 1/3 times 1/3, which is 1/9. 1/3 to the first power is just 1/3. And we just said on the previous page, any number to the 0 power is 1. Okay, so now let's use our pattern to help us when we do 1/3 to the negative 1 power.
Good morning, Wisconsin.
So we just had an interruption, but we're back again. So we're going to do 1/3 to the negative 1 power. So that is going to be the reciprocal of 1/3 to the first power, which is 1/3. So if I take the reciprocal of 1/3, that's going to be 3/1, or just 3. If I want to do 1/3 to the negative 2 power, I'm going to look at 1/3 squared. And that's 1/9. So all I need to do is take the reciprocal of 1/9, which is 9/1, or just 9. Okay, now I'm going to do 1/3 to the negative 3rd power. So I need to know what is 1/3 to the 3rd power, or 1/3 cubed. It's 1/27. So if I take the reciprocal of that, that would be 27/1, or just 27. So what is the general rule for what we're doing here when we're working with negative exponents? So what we could say is we can take the reciprocal of that positive exponent. So I'm going to write, take the reciprocal, that means flipping your numerator and denominator, of the answer for, the positive exponent. Okay, so how would we write this as an algebraic rule? So I'm going to just use x. So x stands for some number. So any number to the negative power. So to some negative value. So n is representing a different, the number, the exponent, but it's negative. So if I wanted to know what x or any number to the negative power is, all I've got to do is say 1 over that number to the positive power. In other words, I'm taking the reciprocal. That's all that means, okay? If my exponent, if I had this, then it would be this. So I want you to highlight those two because those are important. I'm going to do just a few examples so we can just do it really quickly so we don't have to do those lists like we were doing before. So the whole point of this sheet is for us to kind of discover that rule, the process, but you're not going to want to have to do that every time. So let's suppose I gave you a problem, and make sure you're writing this down, by the way. Let's suppose you had 3 to the negative 5th power. Okay? Well, if I wanted to know what 3 to the negative 5th power is, that's the same as 1 over 3 to the positive 5 power. See how I followed that pattern? I'm looking right here at this. Okay? That's all I've got to do. Now, I'm not going to ask you to take it any further than 1 over 3 to the 5th right now. Just leave it like that. If I had something wonky, if I had this, see how that exponent is in the denominator? That's the same as 3 to the positive 5th power. That's what that's saying. Okay? That's all that's saying. All right, so now it is your turn to do some practice on your own. So after you've submitted this sheet, then you'll be able to do your independent practice. Try it on your own. And then once you're finished, look at the answer key. And as you're looking at the answer key, check if you got it right. If you got it wrong, make an X, and then off to the side write what the correct answer is. And then submit it. And while you're doing that, if you're not understanding, if you're still, saying, I don't understand how Miss Bailey got this answer for number 9, then make a note. And then when you come into your Zoom sessions, you can talk to me or your teacher about that. So that way you can make sure that you understand what's going on. Good luck.